Hello? Okay.
Hi, Commissioner David.
Highland Elder,
I was just checking to make sure you could hear me.
I can.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know, I should have. Oh, is it, what's the reason? There he is.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We'll begin the meeting. Can we call the roll, please, Lynell?
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Present.
Commissioner David,
Present.
Commissioner Gossick Sideman,
Present.
Vice Mayor Moore,
Present.
Mayor Hillman,
Present.
Town Attorney Torcivia, and Town Manager Labadie. He's present via Zoom.
Okay. Can we all stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God,
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is the approval of the agenda. And I see we have some additional information that's been handed to us here. One is data on the water bills. And I would assume we'd like to add that. to the
Yeah,
agenda.
I think it belongs under unfinished business, so 10C. I'd like to add update on water and sewer bills.
Okay, why don't we make that C?
And then the other item, I believe, is already incorporated in the agenda under board action report.
Yes, it is. Okay, any other additions or deletions?
Mayor, I have a few updates, but I'll just include them under the context as we move along.
Okay,
It's sort of already ingrained.
good.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, can we have a motion to accept with deletion?
I move we accept the agenda as amended.
I
A second?
second that.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Let's move on to presentations and proclamations. We have a update from the police department, and welcome, everyone.
Mayor, Commissioners, good afternoon. Thank you for a few minutes. The two things, I'm going to give you an update on our Marine unit and an Officer of the Year award that we're going to go to. First, our Marine unit, since we were here last, we have acquired the boat that the board approved. We're ready for delivery on that boat later this month. We intend to be operational in March, the following month. In the interim, we've been fortunate enough to hire a Marine unit officer who I have here today to introduce to you. Officer Nathania Lai is here. New to us, but certainly not new to law enforcement. Nathania has a background as a lieutenant with Miami PD and as a sergeant in their Marine unit in Miami. So has all the credentials, has a bachelor's degree, 2 master's degrees. She's a firearm instructor, vehicle operations instructor, scuba diver instructor, emergency response first instructor, a few different other ones on top of everything else. So we were very fortunate to be able to bring Nathania on board. Sworn in this morning, a little delay with COVID and some things happening, but really happy to have her on the team now with us. A great asset, comes with some instant credibility in the Marine unit world with some of the other law enforcement entities. We already heard that.
Chief, might we invite her to the podium for a moment?
Sure. Let's see. Do yourself.
First of all, on behalf of the commission, we welcome you. Thank you for selecting us, Highland Beach, and joining us. Wonder if any of the commissioners might have any questions or comments. John, we'll start with you.
Well, this is a very welcomed event. Thank goodness you have decided to join the team. I can tell you that Highland Beach has a population in tremendous support of the police department, and have wanted for years to have the addition of your role. And so I do have one question. As a former sergeant in Miami,
Yes.
what did it take for you to come here?
I think it was just great timing. The chips, everything fell into place for me in life. So I'm very happy to be here. When I heard about this opportunity, it worked out well for me.
And where do you live?
In Broward.
In Broward, so, okay.
Yeah, so I'm not far. I'm not in Miami.
Okay, well, again, all I can say is welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, the two commissioners to my left are boaters, so I think they may have some specific questions. Peggy, it's all yours.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't know what to say. I mean, it seems like you have everything but a fixed wing license, and maybe you have that too. So,
No, I think some other people here might,
oh,
but
that's good.
I prefer the water over the
I
air.
hear you, but I do appreciate, I'm just floored with your credentials. They're fabulous and we're very lucky. And although we're only 3 miles long, 3.1 miles long in terms of the town, we're bound on all 4 sides by water. So This is something I brought up to Chief in 2018, and it's just a thrill to have you on board. I'm scuba certified and a Red Cross swim instructor if you need backup. Just joking. But we're very grateful to have a woman on board as well. And just to really buttress the whole safety and health, safety and welfare of our town. That's been a joint effort of our entire commission here, my colleagues here, to really fill in the gaps where we felt we needed that security. So thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here again, and we're looking forward to getting started out there. So thank you.
I just want to say welcome. I think your credentials are extremely impressive, and I'm so excited you're here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I know there's gonna be questions here for you.
I don't get a chance to chat.
Woo, woo.
I was just gonna say.
So sorry.
Well, this was long overdue, getting our Marine Division up and running. And I'll tell you that Chief moved at lightning speed.
Yes.
We, as a commission, approved this in November, and here we are, February 1st, you're on board, the boat is here, and I understand in early March will be operational. So this has to be a record for any municipality to put this thing together this quickly. And
Yes, for sure. It has been very quick. So
yep, we are thrilled that this has come together. And again, welcome to Highland Beach. We look forward to you being part of our team.
thank you again. Thank you.
You bet. I'm sorry, Evelyn. Go right ahead.
Well, I just have to parrot what other people have said. I'm wowed by your credentials, and I think we are very lucky to have you. So welcome.
Again, happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, back to you, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you. And did I mention she's a boat captain? So she has a captain's license in going to be leading that unit, help training with some of the other officers that are going to be involved with the boating. And since that time, we spent a lot of time talking with all the other entities. You talked about lightning speed. Lieutenant O has been integral in getting this done. Obviously, running a Marine unit for a couple of decades in Broward, he knows what he's doing. And that's the reason why we were able to get this up so fast. FWC, PBSO, Delray, Boca. We've met with the Coast Guard. All these entities could not be more excited, happy for us, ready to work with us. We've talked about interoperability, joint training sessions we are coordinating with now, education campaigns, awareness campaigns, our warnings, our boat safety checks that we've created and we're ready to implement. So there's gonna be a lot going on, a lot of boating safety awareness. Unfortunately, since the last time we met, as you're aware, we had another fatality on the intercoastal that has really gotten people's attention and well, it should. So there's going to be a real need and presence for us. You've already seen FWC out there. They've come and met with us. They were going to be spending a lot of time on the waterways and trying to change some of those habits, the speeds, some of the recklessness, and bring that to a safe boating environment in our community that we know is going to be. So that's what we're working on. We're ready to go. You will see us in March. We'll give you more information as we move forward and progress, but we could not get enough positiveness and responsiveness. The mayor, the county mayor, Weinroth, and Representative Caruso getting involved. We know that they heard from Tallahassee on some of these things and some of the stuff that they're working on behind the scenes on speeds and attention to our area. Unfortunately, statistics like that does get people's attentions, and it's going to get the awareness that it needs. So that's what you have to look forward. We're looking forward to getting out there and getting started and getting in the game with the Marine unit. Anything from me on that?
Yeah, just to update you, I've been working with Mayor Weinroth's office to try to get us some additional funds, specifically for overtime.
Yes.
And it looks rather positive. I'll obviously report when I can say the check's actually in the mail. Things look positive, but obviously can't report that we have anything yet, but we'll see. They're trying to shore up some funds from some of the other commitments that have been made and see if they can extract some money from there for this. So I'll keep the commission up to date and you up to date.
Thank you. And I failed to mention that thanks to the graciousness, generosity of Boca Highlands, we have a slip. Our boat will be in the water in a slip right in their marina, ready to go at any time we need to. Great location, secure, safe, and accessible. So thank you to the group in Boca Highlands. Really appreciate
You're
it.
very welcome.
Comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Chief, I just want to take the opportunity, and for those who are on TV or watching in the video later, there's a half a dozen members of the police force here, and it's an opportunity to really reinforce the fact, the input I get is that the police force the presence is excellent, the responsiveness is excellent, the attitude is positive. I mean, in a world of craziness, we have here an island of harmony and respect for all you and the members of the police force do. So I salute you. Thank you.
Mayor, I'd just like to report too, as our policy, that Representative Mike Caruso phoned me from the House floor last week in Tallahassee and said he met with the state Fish and Wildlife Commission. And the next day they were meeting here with Chief Hartman. And that was a follow-up on the boating, but they are also committed to returning several times to get other matters down pat in terms of measuring the wakes, working out on the dimensions of what we have here. I mean, we're 3.1 miles on the water, but we're also an additional 1/3 mile to the Linton Bridge where you have to slow, and then about 1/4 mile to the Spanish River Bridge. So you've got almost 4 miles of basically full out, whatever speed you want to run, hopefully lawful. So he will be following up, and his people at the FWC with the chief. Thank you.
Anything, Evelyn? Marshall?
No, this is all wonderful news. And yes, we all appreciate our police department because they're wonderful.
Okay. It's all yours, Chief.
Today, we also have the honor and pleasure to introduce our 2021 Police Officer of the Year, Detective Dwayne Fernandez. Dwayne has had a active, busy year, and he's earned this honor, involved in some investigations. If I could just highlight why he was worthy of this award. Dwayne does all of our investigations, as you know, for the town. He had a burglary investigation, house was being tented, 2 burglary suspects. He worked through some surveillance footage, some Ring doorbell camera, worked with some other agencies on some identifications and confessions, and was able to get charges on a couple out of Broward County, responsible for doing quite a few of these. A grand theft auto investigation, $120,000 vehicle.
Wow.
This was a big case for us as the vehicle stolen. Dwayne was immediately involved, got involved with a multi-agency task force out of the South, out of Miami. This vehicle that was stolen from our town with another stolen vehicle ended up being turned over to the people that they fenced these vehicles to. So it became a big case in Broward and Miami because they were able to move to the next level based on that investigation and in our case that was made here right in our local town. Dwayne worked with that theft task force. Recovered stolen property, stolen bicycles for us on this. I know we like to think we don't have any crime here, but we do. We are void of that violent, salacious crime that you see all around, but we do have crime and criminal opportunities that happen. He's been involved in many fraud cases, unfortunately, assisting many of our people in some of the cases that they'd had. A recent one with the last year 6-figure loss and some quick work and detective work on his part, was able to recoup that, working with the banks and save some money for that victim. He's involved in all our investigations, whether he's or he's assisting our people on the road, our newer officers. He's a liaison with the state attorney, our point of contact for any of the agencies, anybody that comes in from the outside. Certainly big piece for the FWC last year with 3 big involved cases with them that they've been enamored with him on and his help. We had an elderly female that lost with dementia. Her husband came in here later in the day, very concerned. Dwayne's quick actions got her tracked in a not so great portion of Miami and had to work through multiple agencies to get her before it got dark. And we safely returned them to him. Very grateful people for that. He runs our senior concern referral program. As you know, we started that many years ago, and it's been very successful. He's assisted so many of our seniors, so many people that live alone that maybe need that extra care, attention, notifications to the loved ones up north. He's worked with families. Based on all those things he does, I can't tell you how his file is full of personal handwritten notes and thank you and some occasional good food shows up at the people. Him. So you can see he's obviously popular inside our department and outside. What makes him a really good detective is not just his years of experience, been assigned to DEA task force, comes with a lot of wealth of experience, training, and a great work ethic. But what makes him really effective and successful is his personality. He's got one of those demeanors. If you've heard him work with cases and deal with people, that compassion, that empathy, those things that we can't teach, that just comes natural to him. Sometimes you got to get up and go out and see who he's talking to. You think it was a family member the way he's trying to help them. And that reflects in how these people feel about him and about us. I think he's just an excellent representative, an ambassador for our department and certainly for this town. We're proud to work with him. I'm proud to work with him, have him on our team, and proud to award him, Detective Dwayne Fernandez, the 2021 Highland Beach Police Department Officer of the Year.
Wow.
Don't ask him any tough questions. He'll struggle.
Just commissioners, town manager, chief, lieutenant, Deborah, town employees, and my fellow brothers and sisters. I'm honored, truly honored. It was a pretty rough year for especially me and my family this year, but I am honored and thank you. From the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor, could we get a photo of Detective Fernandez with the flag and the commission and the chief? Would be terrific for our manager's minute, if I could suggest.
Whatever you want. Yeah.
Stand in front here, both the chiefs too. Stand up. Come over.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you, guys. And thank you. And thank these officers here. I mean, we recognize Dwayne, but what you hear from people is because of what they do every day, the mundane stuff and protecting our community and a continual presence and vigilance. So thank you to all of them that do a great job. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
You got it. Very good. Stay safe.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to public comments. Do we have anybody in the queue?
There's no one that pre-registered for public comments.
Okay, board vacancies. We have a planning board, 1 vacancy for a 3-year term. And that's it on board vacancies. Meetings and events. February 2nd, tomorrow, 1 o'clock, Natural Resources and Preservation Advisory Board meeting. February 10th at 9:30 is the Planning Board regular meeting. That was canceled. And February 15th at 1:30 is the next Town Commission meeting. Board action report, that can be found on page 7. That was from the Financial Advisory Board. And we have a document that was left for us here. That was a discussion on the Financial Advisory Board recommendation. And that was basically, their recommendation was to spend up to 100% of the unassigned fund balance. And would you like to take us through this
Sure.
document, please,
Sure.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, so the motion was actually to increase the assigned reserves to be a third of the budget. Currently, the policy is only 25%. And also to use the full amount of the remaining unassigned reserve to use it towards the fire rescue department. So the handout that we have on our dies is, I just put the two questions that were before the final Financial Advisory Board as far as what was discussed, which is what amount of the assigned fund balance should be used towards the build out of the fire rescue, and if we should amend the fund balance policy for Highland Beach. So if you turn the page, there's two boxes. Okay, cool. Linnell trying to put it up on the screen. But for those of us who have it in front of us, it's basically just a chart of what the current policy is, which is 25% of our budget is assigned for assigned reserves. 16.7% is for the budget stabilization, and then 8.3% is for disaster recovery. And the remaining is for unassigned reserves. And the next box is labeled alternative policy to consider. And it's actually what the board moved to recommend is what's in this box called alternative policy to consider. And that is leave the budget stabilization the way it is, 16.7% of the expenditures, and increase the, so it's the other attachment, the other file. And the other is to increase the disaster recovery from 8.3% of expenditures to 16.7% of expenditures, which increases, so in dollar terms, in general, it increases it to about 1 million to 2 million.
That's the wrong one.
There were 3 files that I had sent, and it was the other file.
No, this is the water one.
I'm not sure that needs to be on the screen.
Well, it's for people that are watching.
Do you want me to send you the
All right.
file again? So I'm gonna keep
Why
going.
don't you go over and help me?
Okay. We'll just wait for Linnell to put it up there. I sent 3 different files, and it's the file that's called the fund
called-
balance.
Yeah,
for
it's called
February.
fund balance. Same email from this morning.
While she's working on that, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
So what you're saying is in the past, 50% of the reserves were unassigned.
I would look at it the other way. Our current policy is we set aside 25% of expenditures to assigned reserves. some to budget stabilization, some to disaster recovery. And whatever is remaining is unassigned reserves. And it just so happens that based on a year ago's budget, it works out to be about that unassigned, that leftover is about half of our budget.
Okay, so that's not policy.
Yeah,
That's not
let's-
policy. Policy is whatever's left over
Right.
is unassigned.
Okay, she's not finding it. Okay, not a problem, not a problem. Couple of things. One, you may, excuse me, I don't want to call you. Okay, Natasha made a wonderful presentation to the Financial Advisory Board. I think that it would behoove all of us to watch the Financial Advisory Board meeting. Obviously, we can look at it online for two reasons. One, you can see her presentation. You can also see the discussion that the board members had on it. That'll give us all excellent background for it. So I think we should table a discussion on it today so that we all have that background so we can have a good in-depth discussion, because we have a big decision to make. The recommendation from the board was to use up to 100%. Also, I want to just have in mind a few things, that if we were to use 100%, we would not be able to do what the commissions in the past and our commission has done when it's budget time. Because for the last several years, and I don't know how many, money was pledged to balance the budget from the reserves. Well, if all of the reserves are used, then that option is no longer available. So to balance the budget, we would either have to find ways to cut that budget, which is always done, obviously, pretty tight, or raise the mill rate. Now, nobody sitting on this up here wants to raise the mill rate unless we absolutely have to. The other thing is, if an idea comes up during the year for 100, 200, 300, whatever $1,000, we can't do that unless there's some extra money lying around someplace. So there are some drawbacks, just operational drawbacks to it, besides whatever our individual philosophical thoughts are. So we need just to consider some of these things. But on the other hand, Natasha made an excellent presentation, and I think we need to look at that and digest it. And I'll be redundant, as well as the comments that the Financial Advisory Board made, because there are some good knowledgeable people on that board. So I'd like to table the discussion, put it on the agenda for, what date was it, the 15th, whenever our next meeting is, and we all have the background, then we can have a good, lively discussion on it.
I
Fair
just
enough?
have a couple of things to say.
Well, 1 second,
Okay.
she had her hand up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we could request the data maybe going back 6-8 years on the times that the funds were accessed. I know in 2018, we got a true up from Delray Beach at 7 p.m. the night before a budget meeting, and we withdrew 168,000 or around that. And I would like to know the other years previous to all of us coming on board and how many times we rated the reserves.
Fine, if memory serves me right, I think it was like 700,000 or something like that. But Marshall, did you
If
catch
we could,
that?
yeah, if we could
Yes,
just.
sir.
Like 7 or 8 years of history?
Or
Yes,
whatever
sir.
is available without too much effort, because it would help us, for those of us who weren't serving in the last 10, 15 years.
Okay,
Thank you.
Natasha?
I would just like to point out that we have at budget time, especially like, for example, a year ago, we did pledge reserves. Our latest quarterly financial report, Q1 2022, indicates that we actually added 1.2 million to reserves. So I'd been working on that we had $6 million in unassigned reserves. But over the past year, even though we pledged reserves at the budget time, we actually added 1.2 million.
Yeah, there's some question on, it may be 7 point something or 6 point something. I certainly hope it's 7 point something. Marshall, I don't know if you got to the bottom of that number yet or not.
Yeah, some of that's is based on unaudited closeout of last fiscal year. So we still have to wrap that up. So that number still could move downward or upward, and that was David's best estimation on where we thought we would be coming out of last year. And I don't know that it was exactly 6 years, 6 million from last year. It's probably 6 million and some change. So we'll tie those numbers down since this conversation will continue, and we'll be able to get you some better ideas. But yes, we did add to the fund balance. I didn't see a number that large being added when I looked. I was guessing around 6.25 was added from last fiscal year that got closed out. That would take it close to 7, but David took a closer look. So let me tie those numbers down for you for the 15th, which we will return this as a formal agenda item.
Okay. Regardless, it's a big plus.
It is a big plus. It's another addition. It is, in my opinion, outstanding work by town staff, controlling our expenses. The fact that we have been able to add to our reserves, year after year while maintaining a pretty low tax rate. And the other thing I really want to point out too is this is a short-term issue because, as we all know, implementing the fire rescue should result in savings from, our current.
Let's hold the discussion. The other thing.
Okay, just
then
want to
I'll-
keep
then I'll
that. I mean,
shut it down.
I just wanted to make sure that people keep that in mind as we take a look at it, that it is to address your comment about not having any money left over, that is a very short-term concern.
The other thing to the plus, when we look at pluses and minuses, pros and cons, even though we have pledged, I think every year since I've been involved, either sitting out there or here, we haven't used it. Okay, so that's a good thing. But we'll put whatever time is necessary into this once everybody is able to see that whole presentation. And Marshall, if you would you email a copy of that presentation as well? Natasha's presentation? So
Yeah,
people have
Teresa will
time
send
to-
that out, kind of a snippet of that section forward along with the vice mayor's background information. So we should be able to get all that out. And I have to appreciate when I hear you guys saying pledging of fund balance, using those terms correctly. It's very exciting to me. So thank you.
You've trained us well, Marshall. You've trained us well.
Just a funny side note, when I was sitting out there, I sat through the presentation and they talked about pledging. I didn't realize what the definition was. You're shaking your head, you remember. I thought when they pledged it, it's gone. They actually used it, period. And then when there was money left over at the end, I thought that they would put it back, okay? So, in the business world, you pledge something, bye-bye, gone. So I was kind of like out to lunch on that whole thing.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to add that while we may not be physically present for our board meetings, that I attempt to watch every single one of them, either while I'm driving or filing something, because it's very useful. It's hard. It would be impossible to do this job without knowing what our boards are doing. So one of them, I'm sure we all watch them if we're not physically at the meeting.
Okay.
One question I have.
Yeah.
Or what I would look for, Marshall, is an answer and along with the vice mayor, input on, I've always viewed this unassigned reserves as, our emergency fund. And I see disaster recovery in here. And so the question is what is enough? I mean, is it $1 million? Is it 2 million? Is it 5 million?
I'm going to intro. You're doing what we said we're not going to do.
Oh, right.
That's
Well,
for next week or 2 weeks.
no, I'm just saying, but this is what I'm looking for is what are towns, what is the percentage that other towns use for, reserves for disaster recovery or for emergencies?
Yeah,
I mean, was that,
And you're going to
do
see
we have
all
that?
That's going to.
That's what the vice mayor presented.
That recording, you're going to see it all.
Yeah.
I mean, she not only looked at more towns, she isolated smaller towns than us, our towns like us, large towns, did a hell of a great job on the research.
Right, that was in an earlier presentation that you made,
Yeah.
and I understand that, but do they actually separate it like we have it here?
Some do, some don't. But it's all in that presentation. And I presented all those same slides
Yeah,
to
you
this
did.
group.
All right,
Yeah.
all right.
Okay, move on. Yes, okay. No ordinances, no consent agendas, unfinished business. Fire rescue. Sitting there very quietly, Sam.
Near and dear.
It's
to
all
my
yours.
heart.
In your agenda packages, you've got, we gotta have an update just based on a meeting we had Friday.
Okay.
The staff, it's a minimal update, but I just thought it's always important to have the
Wow.
latest. I'll explain the differences. You know that you have the latest, let's see your hard copies. While she's pulling it up, again, for the record, I'm Sam Ferrari, principal with PJL Architects. My sidekick, Joby Ballant, apologizes today. We got double booked, and so he took the other meeting because we put it on the wrong day on our calendar. So from our last meeting on the 18th, we listened to the commission comments, and we thought there were 3 outstanding things that you asked us to look at. Vice Mayor Moore asked us to look at option 4, look at adding a second floor so that we'd be comparing apples to apples with all the scenarios having an admin and EOC. Commissioner Schumacher asked to look at a 4th bay for a truck, for another bay for the truck, so we'd have 4 compared to that one option that had 4. And then Commissioner Gossett Seidman asked us to talk about the pros and cons of option 4. In addition to that, we had discussions with Jeff, your building official, and we met last Friday with the Fire Services Implementation Committee to go over kind of where we were and to get their input. So if you jump to the and I can't see through the little plastic screen here, so I'm looking at mine, but I can see that what
Linelda, can you make that full screen?
That is what I'm working on, making
Okay.
it full screen.
Okay, because, all right.
Yeah, it's one more second. Showing full screen. Okay, let me just. There. Why it's not. Yeah, come because it's showing.
What's that? And it's very hard to see through.
Linelda, can you just open up the PowerPoint version and then share it to the screen versus just a static document?
Yes, this is what we're working on, Marcia. That's what
Okay.
we're doing. We're
Okay.
sorry for the delay. This is it. This.
I have a stick version of the PDF. That's what we have here. The PowerPoint version? Not on this. The version is like a huge file, so it's just. Printing on PDF just is. It'd take 2 minutes between each slide for it to load. There we go. So if you could advance to the third slide. That one, correct. So again, we went through the three options, which we're calling option one, which was the 3-bay that we had talked about at the last meeting. And then we created an option 1A, which is the 4-bay solution. And then option 4, which we presented earlier, I think we called it the basic option, but it was also called option 4. So we've gone through and looked at not only the pros and cons for option 4, the commissioner asked for, but we went back and updated the pros and the cons on all of them so that there would be a fair comparison. And then on the far right-hand side of the screen are our estimated cost, which we think are very conservative. We're using $450 a square foot, not including the site improvements. And we just checked some bids that came in Broward County Friday, I think it was last Thursday, on some other, they weren't our projects, but other projects, and they look to be in the about $415 to $430 a square foot. So we think the 450, and that was all in. We couldn't break out their numbers to look at sites. So we feel very confident at this time that, you know, we're still months away from CM bidding this, that the numbers will be good at that point, even though the market is very volatile. So on option 1, which was the 3-bay, basically keep the 2 north bays, convert them to the housing, and we'll go through these in a second. And then demo the south portion of the station and build a 2-story addition there with the admin and EOC on top of that, but all the living quarters would be, and the operations would be on the ground floor. We went through those, and basically it consolidates a lot of the station on the existing site, which basically all 3 of these do now. I think early on you determined that we didn't want to build something in front of town hall. It would take away from town hall, take away from parking. There was a lot of negatives to that. So we've kind of stayed on this site. This would be phased, so it would be 2 phases, and I'll show you in a minute. We've also, from Friday's input from Marshall and the rest of the committee, was let's look at schedule, because we're starting to tighten up on schedule for your operational date, and we want to see how each of these schemes affects that. So that's what you didn't have in your agenda packet, was really that schedule that we studied a little further. Option 1A is the 4-bay scheme. It's very doable, but it adds cost. If you'll see, option 1 is just under, it's about $5.3 million. The 1A, adding another bay, is just under 6.2 million. And the major difference is we're adding square footage, not only on the ground, but to do that, we had to push out the stairs and the elevator, because they have to be able to come out in the second floor of the building, not outside the bay, and the bays need to be together. So what we try to minimize that as much as possible, but it still adds some cost to that. And basically the pros and cons to both of these are very similar. I will tell you the discussion by the committee on Friday was whether ever in the future you would need a 4th bay, and really the only need for a 4th bay, it wouldn't be operational, it would be for storage. And you can probably find other solutions to storage, either off the island or somewhere where you can lease space, that there really wouldn't be a need for additional apparatus. You might want to store the boat in there or something like that, but there's probably a lot more cost-effective ways to do that than to eat up the real estate here, as well as the cost to do that. And then option 4, that when we had presented it, and actually option 4 was an option that we presented back on December 21st in a 2-story scheme. And so we went back and looked at that. Now, one of the things that we had stated in the previous times that we brought this up was the concern with the finished floor below the floodplain and some ADA improvements. But we wanted to look at, a scheme that would be simple to build. And we had not done the legwork or the homework to really sit down with Jeff and talk about not only the Florida Building Code, but the FEMA requirements, plus all the other resiliency things that your codes are moving toward. We found out that if we touch the building, we have to bring it up to code. There's some thresholds, but we're gonna pass those thresholds just because of the cost of this. And that would require either flood proofing or raising the finished floor. Now, we couldn't raise the finished floor on the south part of the station because of the head height of the structure. But we could flood proof it. And our firm is currently working on a project at Miami Beach. It's a new building, but it's attached to an existing building. It's attached to the Miami Beach Library, which is below the floodplain. And so the code requires flood proofing on that building. It's very expensive. It requires, it's almost like, I compare it to the old days when you put up hurricane shutters. It's a very staff, can't get the right word, but right before a storm, you're gonna have the staff to go out there and basically put the flood proof gates in. Because it's a fire station, you have big openings. Those gates are big. You're going to need to store them somewhere. So we're either going to have to build storage for them, or you're going to have to take them off site, then get them back here, and then the staff to do that. So we haven't investigated all that part of the cost, but we know from this other project we're doing, which has much smaller doors. I think the city of Miami Beach was saying it was going to take 6 to 8 hours. And it was probably only about 8 doors. And then there's some other things you have to do for that process. So we're just.
So I think Peg and I were the only ones maybe interested in option 4. I'm okay with abandoning option 4. I mean, I guess the reason I was in favor of option 4, because I was wondering if we could just leave the existing and then just build a new one right next to it. And I thought maybe it'd be faster and cheaper, but it's not turning out to be that way. So I'm okay if we don't talk about option number 4 anymore. So
I would concur. It's a savings of 85,000 and change. So.
And it really isn't in the end, because you're going to have to bring the other code things up. So it's probably going to cost you about $250,000 more. And I can show you real quick on the schedule.
So we don't need to.
It's going to push you to have a temporary facility. So.
Okay, time out a minute. Is there anybody here that wants to stay on a discussion of 4? No.
I'm done with 4.
You're shaking your head also, Evelyn. No.
Yeah, I never liked 4, so okay.
Okay, you can forget about 4 and move on.
Okay, so we'll concentrate on.
Can we go back to 1A then?
Yes, I was going to say we'll concentrate on 1 and 1A.
Okay.
So it really becomes, in terms of operations, I believe all the experts are saying that it's really not necessary. It's a nicety to have. And there will be times that you'll want to store equipment or the fire chief's car or vehicle, or, there may be things that you want to use it for, but is it really worth the cost? And there's a little bit more time, but the time is minimal because it's really the same approach as.
Can I add something to that? At our committee meeting, when we discussed it, there was nobody there that saw a future need for the additional space, the additional bay. We talked about a horizon of 20 or 30 years. Nobody saw a population need for it. Nobody thought that we would have a need for a 5th ambulance and/or / fire truck. The only need they came up with was storage, or like you said, a fire chief's car or something like that. And then when we saw a cost of, $800,000 or $900,000, I have to tell you, we can't afford it. It's just not in the budget. So unless somebody disagrees vehemently, I think we can even drop discussion on 1A.
Well, the main thing that I've heard, and you can maybe expand on this, because the only reason I brought it up is, geez, while you're building this building, that's the cheapest time to add on a bay. And why would it cost 800 to $1 million is unbelievable. But then I hear, well, it's got to be stormproof and it's the walls, you got the upstairs, you got the elevator. But the most compelling reason not to go forward with this is the fact that that wall is still expandable. You could take it out.
Yeah,
and create-
totally valid question. And it's, at the time, if there's a need, the time to do it is now, but it's not, nobody could envision a future need in the next 20 to 30 years.
But it is expandable,
of the
right?
entire group.
Easily expandable.
Right, and just add another bay, one-story bay to the south, if you ever wanted to do that in the future.
And it's not going to cost a whole lot more than it would cost to do it today. So
It blows me away though, that it would
materials.
cost 800,000 for an additional garage. It's really what we're talking about.
And your American Express card can't carry it.
I
so.
can't do it.
Okay, so any
Mr. Mayor?
reason to even, yeah, sure, go
Just
ahead.
wondering if we could ask Mr. Remus or anyone else knows, but I think we have some extra storage space on the property. Don't we have additional storage space, or we could rent one of the portable?
We can always rent,
Units.
or we could always look off the island to
Yes.
find storage if
Got it.
necessary.
Okay,
So,
just
and
double
it's-
checking.
And it's cheaper than this.
Right, understood. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so I think we're all in agreement to go to
Yeah.
one.
Yes.
Anybody disagree?
So
No.
I was just
Okay.
gonna add from the questions that I asked, and I think the committee did a really good job of explaining, was whenever you might need that extra bay to affect operations, whether your call volume went up, it was stated that like Boca is providing more than double the amount of calls in a 2-bay station versus a 3-bay. And that's pretty common. Most of the stations that we do that are not the main station are 2-bay stations, and they have call volumes up to 1,500, 2,000, and some even above that. So your population isn't going to grow to the point, and the demographics aren't going to change to the point that you're going to have triple your call volume in a year.
Right.
Medical director was at the meeting, and he basically talked about he didn't see that the ambulance need would go up, that they're looking, at other services that would need a vehicle in a bay.
Did you have any conversation with the police though? Because I was thinking that it would be least likely for fire versus a future vehicle that we might need in the police department that should have that kind of, first of all, access to A1A, undercover, protected, that is expensive.
We did not have that discussion. The chief was there. I don't know if that's
I'm thinking, is there a specialized vehicle in the future over the next 10 years that might cost $150,000 or whatever that you would want to have undercover?
Not a chance.
Maybe a 65 Mustang or something.
So I think you're coming to the same conclusions that we did and with the committee, that you're on the right track with option one. I think there are, our next step is really to get more into the individual spaces, the design. There's going to be a little bit of a fluctuation with that in the footprint. I want to just jump forward to the next slide, which is the schedule. I think option one can get us there the quickest. That's the top bar. Where we can be finally complete in March of 2023, several months before you want to go operational. When you start looking at those other options, you got really close to that date, and there's really no room to spare if things were to happen, but so really our recommendation on this, and we've been working with Marshall on this, is to get an advertisement for a construction manager as soon as possible. We know that your purchasing department isn't that big, so we're sharing with him some construction manager RFPs from other towns that we see all the time, so that we can maybe help and shortcut that process. And then I just will jump ahead and just go over option one last time here. I don't want to belabor this, but again, we're very comfortable with the estimate of 5.3 million. You have our fees on top of that. I think adding all that into the budget, we're still in the budget. That also includes that temporary canopy out front. And actually, I had a call earlier today. We've been researching, we were researching both full temporary stations and in canopy stations. And what we were getting from most of the companies is they don't really have a lease program on that, but we did run into a company, Advanced Modular from down in Pompano, and they have 2 or 3 stations that they did on a lease arrangement that one of them has come back in, the other 2 are coming back in. And there may be bits and pieces of those, whether it's just the canopies for the truck and maybe some storage that they would put in a lease operation. So I'm going to follow up with the numbers on that and provide them to your staff just to see, because that may be an opportunity. It may happen maybe a little sooner than you want, but in terms of part of the issue we were seeing with these temporary facilities and why the price was getting up there, they were being custom built. You were going to have to purchase it. So you were going to pay that full $250 versus a monthly rental rate, which would be much lower. And right now we have 100,000 in that $5.3 million budget for that. If we could cut that, again, it's more for the building or more for the rest of your project, the other things that you're going to still have to purchase. On the, Linelda, if you could just go to the next slide, because that's where I'm really talking from right now. The right-hand side is the program that we have developed, and we'll start working with your committee and staff to finalize all these numbers. These numbers are really based on the facilities that we've recently done and the ones we're doing for Palm Beach County right now. So we know the sizes of the spaces are what I'll call it the competitors are building, which will be important in your recruitment process, that you have nice, facilities that are comparable to other agencies, so that people say they don't want to come to Highland Beach because they have inferior facilities, or you didn't go the extra mile to do that. And we think that's important. And then I think you've seen the rest of the presentation, Mira. I don't know if you want to go through the rest of what it's going to look like, because it's going to change what this does. And if you could, I think Marshall's going to be looking for an authorization. Marshall, I don't know if how you want to.
Yes, I have some questions first.
Okay.
On the schedule, let's go back to the schedule. I have seen a lot of charts like this in my career, and it looks great in the beginning. Biggest issue is contingencies for problems that occur. How much time do you have built in for contingencies? Because, honestly, March, that's pretty close to a drop dead date.
Correct. So what we use we call this a schedule tool. One of the things that we'll have in the advertisement for the construction manager is to do a detailed, what we call like a primavera schedule that has every task. What is the critical timeline for each of those? What are the alternates to that? And we'll work with them to make sure that we're within this. The part in the yellow and the blue and the teal, that's really our services. We know from our past experience that we can meet these or exceed them. And again, part of this will be getting that construction manager on board early. So we're dialoguing with them. We're checking costs with them. We're checking material availability. We may be recommending an early package to have the CM put together an early package for maybe the demo, some demolition. So when it's ready to go, some site utilities, so we can get all the prep work done. So when they start to go vertical, there's no delay while you're waiting to move, a water line or sprinklers or whatever. We can put that in the schedule, and everybody can see each task and what it'll take to do it. What are the critical tasks? What are the non-critical tasks? So those are the tools that we use. This is just really a simple bar chart, but we'll be doing that. And we'll make sure that we have monthly meetings with the contractor, and they'll have to update their schedule and show if there's any delay. And always the question is, what's the contingency to make that up?
And money. Okay, so the other question is, we've not done any geological survey of underneath. Do we have any idea if we would run into any problems with the ground, given what we're trying to add to that space?
So part of the service is to do a geotechnical work. Some of it's going to be a little difficult to do because part of the station's sitting there, but we'll do it right outside the footprint.
Yep.
We do have the data from the existing building addition that was done in 95. It's on piles. They're small piles. And so We will probably, in the next few weeks, knowing the direction we're going, is authorize the geotech to come out here and do maybe a couple of borings so we can get right in front of the station where we can get easy access and take those preliminary borings so that the foundations can be designed to make sure they, can withstand all the loads of the building. So I don't see it as a big issue. I mean, I think everything around here is on piles. It's just really the number of piles, the size of the piles.
And we don't know how far down we have to go before we hit real, I guess, marl or coral rock of some kind.
I mean, I don't know what the other buildings that are being, the houses that are being built.
We've seen 40 feet, maybe 40, 50.
Yeah, I from my early discussions with our geotech engineer, he was saying 30 to 50 feet is what he sees on some of the big houses that are being built in the town. They've done a lot of that work around here, so they basically know, but each site is a little bit different, and we'll just have to understand that. The other thing is the ground floor slabs will be all reinforced for the weight of the trucks. And also the apron in front of the truck bay going out to A1A will all be reinforced concrete. So sometimes those have to be put on piles just because of the weight of them. So that'll be part of that study to tell us that. But we're going to do that early because we need to make sure when we make those decisions are the right decisions.
One last point I'd make is, I know that we don't see much of a change in our population, although maybe 500 to 1,000. On the other hand, a future commission, bring up a testy subject, could decide that, these 60, 70-year-old buildings, they really got to go. They got to be scraped and we got to build a new one. Well, right now it's 35 feet, right? Well, they got a 10, 15-story building there. They're going to take it down. So they would need to have some sort of rezoning to allow that, an ordinance approved. But then they would say, well, wait a minute, we don't want to just replace an 11-story building with 11 stories. We'd rather have 20 stories or more. And then you could have multiple buildings like that. The population could dramatically increase. But you're saying that with 3 bays, we could literally add 2,000 or 3,000, maybe 4,000 to the population, double the population, and we could still service it well enough. I know this is a theoretical out there on the edge, but I got to ask the question.
Glenn Joseph,
Building codes.
You're right. I mean, you could design the city and decide to go up and make all kinds of changes. Our current usability, utility of the station right now is about 700 to 800 calls per year. We could actually almost triple that and still not need to add equipment.
And 700 to 800 calls per year based on past and current demand.
Correct. I mean, some of the other cities are running 2,500 calls per month out of a 2 to 3 bay station.
Okay, so we could
have the capacity, foreseeable capacity. But if you're going to redesign the city to that effect in some foreseeable future, you would have to decide. That commission would have to decide then what kind of infrastructure to put in place to manage that extra population. They would not do it in a vacuum based on, so they'd have to look at the infrastructure that's available, the police department, fire department, water, and all that stuff, and plan all those things together. So it wouldn't be done one ad hoc. You know what I'm saying? So it'll be a planned growth rather than an ad hoc addition.
You know what would happen to your tax base if that occurred?
Well, it'd go way up.
Absolutely.
And with expensive places.
So in the event that you actually needed another bay, which is super highly unlikely, it would.
Peanuts. Based upon what we'd be getting in the way of tax revenue. Now, and again, it's expandable. So I'm done with 1A because it is expandable and it can cover us, but we're also with 3 bays, more than what we have with 1 bay or two bays. We're covered for the next 10 to 20 years.
It's a non-issue, John.
Yeah, for the foreseeable future, 3 bays should cover your needs. As far as my professional advice is 3 bays could cover your needs for the foreseeable future. If there's a radical change in the way you design and build the city, then whoever is designing and building the city would have to take that into consideration and make some adjustments based on that.
So my single only remaining worry this is what I would worry. What would keep me up at night is not everything that we've talked about. No, it's this schedule. This schedule, you know, again, having seen these get blown so often, and you go 6 months later than you thought. And now we got real problems.
I agree with you. I mean, the build schedule for most of those plans are going to be anywhere from 12 to 18 months. If we start in October, that means the ending around March of 2024. We need to start looking at hiring personnel and bring them on board in the first quarter of 2024. And so it could get quite
Dicey.
you know, it'd be a very, very close process. So anything that would actually reduce the build schedule time will give us more flexibility in the way we're able to move forward. But hiring usually takes 8 to 12 months to hire.
Look, that's why we're bringing in a construction manager sooner rather than later.
Right.
One. Number two, if we run into a problem with getting materials, which is really the critical path on all of this, and we don't have this ready by May of 24, we'll be real close. You know, you've got the makings of it, then housing them is no problem, because building the housing is the early part of getting this done. So the housing will be set. The vehicles will be here. They'll just be housed outside of it. So we'll be able to operate. That's not an issue. We'll be operating all the way through this. We'll change over the personnel. The whole thing won't be completed, but they'll be able to be housed. The vehicles will be here. They just won't be in the firehouse. They'll be right out here in the front and will be operational. It won't be 100% ideal, but the health and safety of the population will not be affected. So we will be operational. It just won't be the way we want it to be. That's all. But no concern about, you know, us being able to run a fire department. The biggest issue might be the offices upstairs. We'll have to squeeze them in wherever we have to squeeze them in, and, you know, buddy up and 2 people at a desk, et cetera, until we get everything finished off, and we'll be beaten up on Sam. Okay, so, but that's the worst thing that can happen. The best thing is get it done on time, obviously, but I'm not worried about the health and safety of the population. That'll be foremost.
That's not my concern, honestly. It's time and cost, and we look like a mess out there for a long period of time.
Longer than we want to, more than we want to. We'll look like idiots, but anybody that dials 911 is going to get serviced quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally agree. And that's not my concern. Again, the time is literally the time it will take, and delay. And delay also means money. So.
Yeah, well, again, Sam, correct me, you've built many of these. I mean, I've built warehouses, you know, I've built factories, but I've never built one of these. I believe is the materials. That's the critical part.
It is the materials. And if you look at the schedule, so the phase 1 is really rebuilding the housing where the 2 existing bays are now. That's going to be done in early 23. And that's all really interior work other than raising the finished floor to accomplish that. And that's not a difficult task. So as the mayor said, you know, if there were any delays, it would probably be in the finishing of the second floor or the EOC, the more kind of little complicated interior spaces, and you would be able to operate either the station house itself on the first floor with some access. We'd have to get some, you know, access for the workers outside of that, which is not a big deal. Or worst case is a storm or something were to delay the construction at some point, you would have the vehicles outside while you finished it up. But from our experience, we think this time frame is adequate. And like I said, what we're really looking for is the input from a construction manager to what are those materials that we can readily get, so there's no delays at the beginning. We get a finished set of plans and they can't start because they're waiting for steel, because steel is 6 to 8 weeks. We'll make sure that we make the right material choices, that we pick the materials that are available. We had a little bit of discussion with the building official last week on potentially even tilt wall or precast concrete exterior panels. Tilt wall is where they build them on the ground and they tilt them up. Here, we really don't have the room for that, but we could potentially look at another site, maybe even the park site, to cast the panels, which could start early. And then basically the whole outside frame of the building would go up in less than a month.
Yeah, that would save a ton of time as we were advised. Yep.
Right.
And as I understand it, the doors, the garage doors, so to speak, they're like 60 grand a piece or something. I mean, they're really expensive because they're stormproof.
The what I call the fast opening stormproof doors are about $30-some thousand a leaf.
A leaf.
Yeah, so $60,000-$70,000 for the opening, but they're very sturdy. Where the overhead doors tend to not open fast enough, they get damaged. They're not as sturdy. So those are things we'll evaluate and make recommendations as we get down the line to, their availability.
I vote for no doors. What do you think?
And
Those
one
little plastic curtains like this.
just out of curiosity, what are you looking at for building, the roof of the building? From the illustrations, it looks like it's a metal roof, but.
No, it's probably going to be a tile roof to match this, but those are the kind of things we'll come back to you on when we get to the aesthetic look. And
Later.
Right.
Yeah, I just
get it going.
I was just personally curious. I do have a question for the
Anybody
mayor.
have any questions besides John? Go right ahead.
Just a minor one, and this was your idea, Mr. Mayor, originally, the joining of the buildings aesthetically, you had suggested perhaps this false front roof. Is there any possibility of building like a second floor outdoor porch or lookout?
Yeah.
Are we still looking into that?
Yeah, it's actually.
We will look at all of
Did I
that.
miss?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, just
And,
as
and he'll work on the overall aesthetic, so everything looks like it's been there for a long time.
understand. Okay, just checking. Thank you.
Yep. Anything from you, Natasha? You good?
Nope, I'm good.
Anything from you, Evelyn?
No, I think we're moving as fast as we can. The bottom line is we've got to get it started now.
Yeah, that's the key. Okay, Marshall, do we need a motion and a vote on this to move forward on Plan 1?
If I could just get a motion on selecting the option, so I'm moving in the direction you want me to move in, I think I could be rest assured that I'm moving in the right direction. So if you just pick an option, we'll start pursuing that, and then the commission will start seeing the details and awarding the contracts for CM and all that stuff. But if we could just pick an option so we can hit the ground running as soon as possible.
Okay, so let's entertain a motion to move forward on option 1.
So I move that we move forward with option 1 as presented by PGAL, which is a phased 3-bay rebuild with temporary truck canopy and parking lot.
Is there a second?
I second option 1.
Any further discussion? There is none. Do we need I think we do a voice vote on this one.
Yes. Vice Mayor Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Yes.
Commissioner Gossick Sideman,
Yes.
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Yes.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
and Mayor Hillman.
Yes,
Motion carries.
well done.
Thank you very much, and we'll bring back some, what's this building going to really look like in a few weeks, so. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Sam. Well done.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we've been at this for a little while. Do we want to continue or do we want to break?
Continue.
Okay, we're good. Okay, let's go on to discussion on the permit pricing discount. And we'll turn this over to our manager.
Sure. So at the last meeting, we had a further discussion of either a discount or fee reduction to recognize current market conditions that are driving up construction place, supply chain, labor costs, and the like, similar to the things that we just discussed with the fire station. So from that conversation, we said we would bring back a resolution for further consideration. You have that resolution before you today. Mr. Remus was able to work with our system and found that he can do a discount, a simple discount. Again, the discount would not apply to after the fact charges or penalty charges, reinspection charges. Those would stay in place and hold. And also when we had Mr. Rubin look at this for drafting the resolution, he preferred the discount versus across the board fee structure adjustment, because we are recognizing a point in time, that meaning the supply chain issues and the labor shortages and cost increases. And as we have had in this conversation, we recognize because of the current fund balance in the building department, you could do this comfortably without being concerned that it's going to have a budgetary impact on operations. And inevitably, we would be having this conversation come October because that fund balance is relatively robust and sound, even though it is consistent with statute. So we haven't oversaved. It's probably to the point where we would start looking at either holding fees or slightly reducing fees based on the activities. And Jeff and I would like a few more quarters before we talk about major changes to the fee structure to see how we move through these summer months. So you have a resolution for the discount recognizing the items that were discussed by the commission.
Okay, the resolution starts on page 10, but I draw your attention to page 11. Up at the top, section 3, the second sentence at the end says that it ends on April 29th. It was supposed to run through the end of the year, so that would be the last day of September. I don't know where April came from. I'm assuming that was a mistake.
Looks like a typo.
So until September 30th of this year,
Right.
fiscal year. Thank you.
Jeff, do you want to add anything before the commissioners start to go through your goal?
No, everything's laid out here for you.
Okay.
Yep.
Any comments, John?
Just a quick one on, you have a surplus. And as I understand it, over the years, that has increased partly because the town budget, the general fund kind of took care of some of those expenses that would normally have been charged to the building department. Is that not correct?
In the past, and Marshall can confirm this, there was an integration into the general fund with the building department. It wasn't separated. So because of state laws, we were required to separate it and become our own enterprise fund.
Right, but I'm just understanding, I've gotten some, let's say, resident input, but geez, we've got a surplus. Why couldn't we even do more than, say, a 10% or something? And it would just seem to me that the surplus is kind of much higher than it would be if we had integrated it well enough so that all charges were made against the building department that was relevant, but that it has been worked out now going forward so that the full costs are now borne by the building department, and that those increases in the surplus won't happen as fast, especially not even counting lowering the prices come September, if we do that. Are you following me on that?
No, I am. And so the amount that was going into, what you want to describe as surplus, okay, that has been, the amount going into that has been shrinking as we move forward just the last few years. So by the end of this budget, it's going to be really close. And by state statute, we are allowed to move forward with an average of our entire operating budget for the previous 4 years. So whatever the previous 4 years are, the average of those 4 years is the amount that we are allowed to carry forward into the new year. Because unlike taxes and unlike the water department, the building department is very volatile with the revenue stream because it's based on construction, and you're always going to have you're going to have a very little change in unless there's some kind of a major problem. You're very consistent with your tax revenue. You're very consistent with your water revenue and water and sewer. The building department is very volatile, and that's why state statute allows us to bring forward the average of the full operating budget over the previous 4 years. That's what we can carry forward. And then we can also have another reserve fund But that typically has to be an amount that's specifically earmarked by the commission for maybe a new building, or maybe there's plans that we're going to be doing something for capital expenditures or something has to be specifically earmarked for that.
And that's separate from the reserves you're talking about, right?
It's a completely separate fund,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yes. Mhm.
Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you very much for that explanation. I would say, just in general, this is a positive step. I think, I hope that the residents would see this as a, an action by the building department, the commission, but really to help those who are needing permits and they're expensive or they are a pain. Now, it is also true that in the past, there's been some negative views about, dealing with the building department with the changes you've made. I can tell you, I even heard today some very positive feelings about, you're acting as more as an advocate and as an advisor rather than an adversary for the residents. And I think that attitude is really important to continue being an advocate, being an advisor for the residents, to work with them and not to be, a roadblock or a stumbling block or a maze of headaches for our residents. So I think you're making very good progress. I think this just adds to it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Peg?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. If we didn't do this, Mr. Remus, I wondered what would we do with our excess funds? Just hypothetically speaking.
So it wouldn't be up to me with what was done with the excess funds. My only plan was to evaluate at the end of this fiscal year, now that I have a solid 2 full years behind me, plus some data from when we had the previous building official for a year, and then take all of that information and look at our budget and then the cost of the average permit, the valuation, and then come up with a completely new fees, make it not maybe a new completely new one, but make adjustments as necessary so that we are more in line with where we're supposed to be, which is kind of where we're at right now already, to be quite honest with you. We're pretty much right there.
What do you mean? We're pretty much right there. We're caught up with we're balancing out better.
We are balancing out better because we've had some
Same.
increased costs because we've had a lot of increased workload, and that's keeping in line with the revenue stream.
Got it. And I understand it would be a recommendation, not a decision on your part, but of course, we look to you to assist us with this. And would you have an idea of a plan of how we would deal with any resident pushback? Say those who may say, "Oh, I didn't get a deduction on my permit, so why does this my next door neighbor?" I mean, we may have some pushback on that. Do you have an idea of how to manage that?
Yeah, just the way I've been managing the department for the last 2 years. It just, it's good outreach to the community and just giving them honest answers. I just believe in honesty. This is the way it was passed. This is the way it was put forth, and this is what we're going to do. And it would actually be extremely difficult for us to go and try to reapply those, because if someone in the way the system is built, if someone in the past says, well, now I want my discount, and they're doing an added value, we may end up owing them money. I can't do that.
Understood.
So it applies for what comes in after a specific date.
Understood. And of course, they may have paid less for materials anyway, so it's a balance there. Okay, thank you. That's it for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Natasha?
I think it makes complete sense. I agree that the amount of your budget that you keep in reserves is more than what we would in general reserves, general budget, because we have the tax revenue. So I completely agree. And I really like that we can recognize some savings right away. So, and I look forward to your analysis on what the new rates would be in the future. That's it.
Okay. Evelyn?
I don't really see a problem with explaining to people that the rates changed. We change the rates on a regular basis. And if you build before, your permits are one price. And if you build after the rate change, they're another. This is just the same thing. And I think it's a nice thing to do because we're recognizing that it's costing more to build things now than it did a year ago. So I'm all for it, and with the change date to September 30th, 2022. to.
Okay. I guess I don't have any comments.
Mayor, just a quick,
anything else?
another little question.
Yeah, sure.
So just to clarify, we would be, for the next fiscal year, we would be reevaluating other permit fees and we would have a figure on this average of last 4 years.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
we'll have that forthcoming. This is a temporary measure until such time.
Yeah, we would do a complete review
Got it. Thank you.
and compared to other communities.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
This will be what, 18?
Yep.
So this will be 4 years since we reset these fees. So that would be good timing to reevaluate. I
Yeah,
think
it
this was 4 years.
18, right?
Yes, sir.
Yep,
Like
yep.
it was July of 18. So
Yeah.
that would be good timing.
Perfect timing.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, we need a motion.
I move we accept resolution number 2022-004, temporary discount on building permit fees as amended.
Your second.
I second it.
Any further discussion?
Can we have a roll call vote on that one,
Okay,
please? Vice Mayor Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Yes.
Commissioner David,
Yes,
Commissioner Gossick Seidman,
Yes.
and Mayor Hillman.
yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Okay, let's move on to water bills. When we had
Okay.
it.
Item 10C, here's an update on water bills. In a nutshell, we are on track, in my opinion, with water bills, with the analysis that I have done so far. If you, there's a handout that you received on the top. It says summary of water bills by type. And yes, that's it. So I got from the town detailed bill information, and I got it for different time periods. So I got the bills from April 2021 to January 2022. And I also got the time shot of the snapshot of April 20 to January 2021. So as you recall, we implemented our first big rate increase as a result of our study effective April 1st, 2021. And then we also made another increase in October of 21. And our goal was obviously to increase revenues, and we also wanted to improve equity among the different types of dwellings that we have. So if you look at the information that's presented here, I have categorized all the bills into the different types. So if you look at the left-hand side, all the bills are categorized as either condo, I'm calling it single-family homes. We have a church, commercial, which is Delray Sands, and the governmental entities. And you can see what the billed amounts are for each of the types, and the total bills for this time period is about $3.1 million. So if you look at, move to the right a little bit, what's labeled as A, share of billed amount. So what that picture, that's a pie. So the condo, you want the condo piece of pie if you like pie, it represents 73% of the pie. It's almost three, a big piece of pie. Single family represents 23%. And then the remaining represent a pretty small share. So that is what each of these types represent of the billed amounts. If you look at the previous time period, April 20 through 21, I did that same, I put the billed amounts in the same criteria. And if you look at the pie, or the share that the condos represented, so the condos, based on the previous bills, represented an even bigger share, 77%. So we have achieved, in my opinion, one of those goals, which is to move in the direction in that the condos are representing a smaller share of the billings as compared to the single family home. So the concern was, when we went into this study where the condos paying more than their share. Their share did go down. Moving to the right, what's labeled as B, this kind of helps explain why that happened. So what's in the rectangle B is how the billed amounts by type has changed. So for the condos, their bills went up by 17%. So as the result of the rate increases that we did April 1 and October 1, their bills went up 17%. The single family homes, their bills went up 46%. So that kind of helps explains why those shares changed.
That's an interesting statistic because I was focused immediately on, we did move the needle in terms of trying to equalize condo to single family, but not a whole lot. Went from 20 to 23, 77 to 73, moved in, like you said, in the right direction, but not a whole bunch. But 46% increase in single family.
Yeah, and I think the reason why we did that, exactly.
That's a big increase.
We did that when we were evaluating the rate changes. I think that was one thing we were taking into consideration was moving in the right direction, but also keeping in mind the rate impact on our residents. And so while the single family, I think this kind of does that.
It's a big hit.
The single family homes are getting a big hit.
Yep. You can't solve the problem overnight.
Right.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah.
So is the thinking that we overshot them?
No, I think,
No.
I think we are balancing the different considerations well, in my opinion.
I think her choice of word, Natasha's choice of words is right on. Moving in the right direction. You can't do this in 1 year. Got to very slowly do it because you're asking too much. The single families represent such a small percentage of the grand total. You just can't do it quickly. I'm there. I'm with you.
That's good. Yeah, I was pleased when I looked at these results. So moving along to the right, rectangular C. And this is another way to look at, to compare equity. So condos, to the right of, that box in the upper right-hand corner, based on the most recent bills, April 21 through January 22, condos used, and I think this is 182 million gallons, I think is what this is. These are in thousands. So condos, so that's usage, that's the water usage. So that 182 represents 62% of the total water usage in Highland Beach. So I think if this were a perfect world, we would have the share of the billed amounts approach the share of the usage, the water usage.
No, that's not the case.
We're close though, or I didn't have the usage for the prior year. I think if I did, it would look better than it did last year.
Well, to me, it shows single families are really using a lot of water. As they say in Boston, a lot of water. That's amazing. 35%.
Well, what's the difference between the 182,802 and the far left, the 2319?
The 2319 is $1, is the billed amounts, and the 182 represents the actual gallons of water. 182 million usage. It's the water usage. So one is $1 amount.
Round numbers, that's a third, 2/3. But over on the left, the dollars, it's a quarter, 3/4.
You're talking about the share of the pie. So the share of the pie of the water usage, condos use
In gallons.
62% of the water.
We're saying gallons of water, right?
182, I think that's million. I think that's, yeah, these are
I
in
think
thousands.
it's more.
Yeah.
So if it's 35% of the gallons, why is it 23% of the dollars?
Dollars, yeah, yeah.
That's because the condos are paying a higher rate per gallon.
Yes, they are.
Because they're at the higher usage fee.
It's because of the rate structure. Yes,
Right,
yes.
That has to be it, right?
Yeah, yes. Because of the way the rate structure is, yes, that's how that works out.
Yep, I was just
To
like
be.
thinking out loud.
Yep, yep. And D, the box D is the billed amount per usage. So it's the billed amount, the 2.3 million
Okay.
divided by the 182 gives you the 12.7.
And what does column D represent?
It represents the dollars per usage.
Got it, okay. Very well done, thank you. Now, this next page bothers me because I see my own little town, my own little.
I knew you were gonna like that. So before we move off from the first page, I would just like, if you could compare, I just want to bring, I want to draw your attention to the bottom. So look at B, the rectangle B. The bottom row of rectangle B says 23%.
Okay.
23% represents billed amounts in the most recent period, the 3.163 million, over the billed amounts in the previous period, the 2.564. So the 23% represents the increase in billed amounts from the prior annual period, an increase of 23%. Okay.
And what was our plan for that
Okay,
period?
so Linelda, if you could go to the last
I'm your
page.
straight man here, okay?
Turn to your last page of the packet. So this page is from the Raftalist study, and it's page 29 of the Raftalist study. And this is what they had intended as far as our increases. So these numbers that I'm presenting for you, these are actually water and sewer. I should label that better. It's actually water and sewer combined. So in their chart, in the Raftalist chart, the consolidated number, the first increase was 6.3%. The second increase was 11.9. So these numbers should be compared to, so that 23% should be compared to the 19. The percentage increase that Raftalist wanted us to gain after that second
On
year.
the far right, cumulative increase?
Yeah, so I did cumulative. So they wanted 6.3 in the first year, 11.7 in the second year, 10.8 in the third year, 5, 2.5.
Yes, okay.
So if you cumulate those, which is what this is, this first one is basically because the first increase was 4.1, the second increase was 10.121. It's basically the 6.3 times the 11.9, which is a total of Raftalist was intending us to get a 19% increase. That was the expected increase, 19.
The 19.
19.
Okay.
And we have 23.
That's close.
That's pretty damn close.
You can't get much closer.
Now we still
Except it
need,
adds to 18. 6.3 and 11.7.
you don't add, you multiply, and I'm rounding
21, 22.
So-
Okay. So that 19 compares to the 23?
23. And we still don't have the last 2 months of the year. And I can tell you, I turned off my water. I wonder how many people have adjusted their water usage because of the.
I used to have a rather large boat. So, when you're out on a boat, water is precious. So I've always used my water like I'm on the boat. We take quick showers, turn off the water between brushing, so we got into the habit.
Right.
But I'm sure nobody else in our building does that.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
individually, we don't get the bill.
Exactly. Condos are very difficult. You've got condos with over 100 units. Are they really paying attention? I would imagine now condos are maybe paying a little bit more attention because of the rate increases. So if we could turn to the second page. So I wanted to give you a feel. I know we've heard some chatter, or at least I've heard some chatter all around, but also like from condos. And so I wanted to show, and without highlighting any individual, I didn't put any single family homes here. So I basically just, all the condos that had 25 units or more are on this page. And I sorted it by address, so you can look up your favorite condo easily. And I highlighted, so if you scroll down a little bit, Linelda, so the one that's highlighted in green, and the font is green, that is the condo that had the biggest, actually observed a decrease in their bills. So 45 Ocean actually did very well. They actually observed a decrease. So if you go all the way to the right in this table, it's the dollar, I calculated the dollar change per unit and the dollar change per unit per bill, just to give you a feel for what is the impact on the individual unit owner for these bills. So the individual unit owner saw in 45 Ocean saw $187 reduction in their water bill for the entire time period, and per bill it's about $37. So that's 4511, 4505 also saw a reduction. Toscana also 3,700 also saw, I guess all the Toscanas, they got reductions. And then what's this other one? Villa Magna also had a decrease. Sorry, Mayor, yours was your building had a pretty big increase. So the biggest was Parker Highland with an $82 per unit increase, and then Dalton had a pretty big increase in Karen
I feel
House.
terrible. My building is the worst on the entire list.
No, it's not. It's not. No, Parker Highland is the worst, and then Karen is the second worst.
What? Oh yeah, 82. Thank you. Ooh.
And then Trafalgar also.
Oh yeah, you
had
saved me.
So I highlighted
I'm
on
still
here.
embarrassed.
I mean, I did look at your building. You had a dip in bills in the year prior. So
We must have had a leak.
I don't know.
Wow.
Your April 20 to 21, your bills were very low, and then it bounced back up. But anyway,
My goodness.
the point in telling you this is to give you a feel for what people individual unit owners have felt as a result of these rate increases. The other point is to show there are condos that actually had savings. And I saw that in single family homes. Those single family homes that didn't use much water, they were really rewarded because those people got a big savings. Those people that at the higher ends of the usage, they're the ones that got hit with the higher rates. So, and as you already saw, the average increase was about 17%. So in my opinion, it did exactly what we had intended to do. I think the results are reasonable. And
So you don't really think we should make any changes?
well, the changes are going to, so what we need Raftalists to do, which I'm sure I know they're getting started, is taking a look at as far as like the whole transferring of the debt service and how much money we have and the American Rescue dollars. So the next increase is supposed to be 10.8%. And then after that, another 5%. And after that, another 2.5%. So Raftalists will help us understand, now that we have the American Rescue dollars, and now that we have these dollars to fine tune the remaining percentage increases. But yeah, I think we're on track. I think ultimately it looks like we're on track with doing what they had originally proposed.
But it looks positive that those planned increases might come down. No?
It's possible. I mean,
Yeah,
if,
possibly.
Rafthalus was expecting a 19% increase, we really got a 23% increase. So if that really does continue by the end of the year, we're ahead 4%.
Well, we're also ahead overall financially, not just the rates, because of the money that came to us.
The American
that we
Rescue Plan
used.
dollars.
So,
Yeah.
but this is a great piece of work. Thank you, thank you,
You're
thank you.
welcome. You're welcome.
You knew that I was going to be.
I knew you were gonna like it,
Yeah.
which is why I started with.
This is better than sweet chocolate.
Wow, that's a high compliment. Thank
Not as
you.
good as dark chocolate. but
Okay.
this
Okay.
is great. Thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
very much.
You're very welcome.
Any questions on this before we move on?
Oh, nice
Go
work.
ahead. Yep.
If I recall correctly, single-family homes' greatest expenditure was in the sprinkler systems. And I do know some persons who reduce their usage. I know there's some houses who have it on daily for whatever reason. And so maybe down the road, we could consider reminding people that that was a respectful position. If they want to try to reduce their usage, maybe that. And then we could reinstitute codes to sprinkler dates and times, which we used to have and were disbanded.
Yeah.
So as a guidepost, not to run around ticketing people, which have our sprinklers on the wrong day or someone, but
That's not.
it's just an option down the road for overall addressing the supply and the demand, because people don't always know.
We ought to do that in our
Single-family house.
monthly newsletter.
That would be a good idea.
Yeah, Marshall's shaking his head, so he's got it.
Because truly, I have heard that there is a reduction in your usage in a single family home.
Yep.
Despite-
Just on this list, there's some, 40 or so on this list. 7 of them are in negatives, meaning less than previous year. 9 of them are plus 10, or not negative, but less than 10 of an increase. I mean, just put that together. There's 16 out of roughly 40 are doing really great. So it proves it can be done if you pay attention to it. And these are buildings, not single family. So, a couple of them probably fall into it, not knowing, but you pay attention to it and you try to save the water, you can. And this is a great reminder for me, for my building, for sure. Okay, well done. Anything else before we move on? All good? Okay. Peggy, on to you for the legislative updates.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Just following up on some previous comments with the bills passing through the legislature. The Senate did vote, actually here it's 28-8, to impose new requirements on municipalities before they adopt ordinances. This is being heavily opposed by the Florida League of Cities because obviously it would require yet unknown amounts of paperwork and putting a burden on local governments to get state input, or if not authorization before passing an ordinance. We're not sure how it will go, but it is moving quickly. And I think we mentioned earlier, if we had some lingering ordinances, maybe we want to get them addressed and looked at. Although the legislature has been known to not grandfather in immediately passed resolutions on this kind of a thing. We'll have to wait and see. Secondly, this is an interesting one. It doesn't really affect us that greatly as in terms of our town, but there is a bill suggesting to substantially amend the basically working in a lawful business within a town, giving more flexibility to a person engaging in that. And it keeps getting tossed around. I'm not sure where it's going to go. There is a really interesting House Bill 1555. Actually, the report, it's property rights to prune, trim, and remove trees. And interestingly, the League of Cities contact on that is Jeff Branch. So we were all having a good laugh on Mr. Branch overseeing the trees. So it would amend the current law to prohibit governments from requiring permits to remove dangerous trees. For example, those we've already talked about in past meetings being invasive Schefflera, ficus, and so forth. In other words, if you have a giant Schefflera, just take it out. You don't need a permit. And that is to encourage removal of invasive species. It's not a bad bill in terms of the League of Cities position. And lastly, short-term rentals keeps popping up every week. And it's moving that would prohibit local governments from charging a fee for a local vacation rental after this bill might pass. It would also address the grandfathering in of the fee structure, and that where this is going, we don't know. I did Google a couple of vacation rental sites, and we do have some currently in Highland Beach. So I'll provide that information to Marshall Labadie to follow up and see if they're being followed on. Just curiosity, Googled that. Couple more things. I'll pass out to my colleagues the overall priority and issues, and leave one for Evelyn in her mailbox. At another meeting, it was brought up by the Solid Waste Authority, and they're providing these pamphlets, which were promoted in local newspapers recently, the first of the year, just tips on recycling. I know Marshall put one out, but they've offered to come and speak to the commission at a time that we appoint, and just giving tips to the commission and the residents as to how to properly recycle. And it was noted that they actually make a profit, which not all organizations can claim. They make a profit both on the metals and the paper recycling. Yes,
The
sir.
Natural Resources meets here tomorrow. You
Oh.
might want to leave one behind for them.
I absolutely will. I grabbed a stack.
Great.
And so I think it would be useful because people don't know quite what to do. For example, we shouldn't even throw out fluorescent bulbs, paint, that sort of things. You can drop it off at Linton. It's just nice to know that those who do recycle, it's actually working for our county. Not all counties or states can say that. Thirdly, the Florida League of Cities is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. And they're considered the premier of such organization in all 50 states. They are seemingly the most effective and have the best connections. It's just nice to know. And lastly, but not leastly, it was discussed, a little bit of discussion on fire safety, which is one of our priorities right now. But I don't want to forget a very important thing when we get down to the small matters of our fire safety. And you can actually get these right now from the county, but that's pet stickers. And I brought some for you all. If you have pets in your home, you put a sticker on your front window. Lets firefighters know if you have a problem, you have pets inside. And this is a very big deal among pet owner organizations. You can write in the number of cats and dogs and whatever else. So I brought these for everyone to share. Down the road, I'm sure we'll want to process our own with the Mayor's Friends logo on it. And that's it for me. And I'll keep you posted if there's anything and major developments other than that. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for sending me.
I have a question, Peggy.
Yeah.
Yes,
When
ma'am.
you were talking about the prohibiting fees on B&Bs, does that
Yes.
mean we couldn't charge a registration fee for them
Yes,
to
that's
register?
correct.
As
Yes,
opposed to a tax?
yes,
Because those are two different fee structures.
right. They're talking about not imposing the actual registration fee. The state is interested in encouraging Airbnbs in a controlled manner because it enhances business in the state, tourism, which is the majority of our dollars, keeps our taxes low. So it's a balancing act, and they're both sides working it out. But yes, to answer your question, yes, ma'am.
But we can require them to register.
Yes, absolutely. And based upon we're not really a town that is overwhelmed by Airbnbs, it's probably less problematic for us than other towns, but we need to keep a watch on it, in my opinion.
Two
Yes, sir.
questions.
Yes, sir.
You may have mentioned it, I may have missed it, but on building certification, I know that they're talking about 20 years and all of this. Where did things stand on that?
That has not moved in the past week that I've seen dramatically. They are considering how long and to what degree there is a state control. I think the feeling, at least the League of Cities said, the feeling is they can't do nothing because of the tragedy of Surfside being an international story. But where that's going, I'll let you know if I hear anything further.
The only thing I've heard is it was TV news stating that they were considering, the first pass at 20 years.
Yes.
We're looking at 25 and Boca's got 30 and so forth.
Yes.
Okay, the other question is on this document you just passed out.
Yeah.
Beach management. Now, we're also deep into how we can preserve the dune, which seems to be there's $50 million here for the ecosystem.
Yes.
How can we play this one?
Well, nothing moved on that lately. The pamphlets I passed out were from the beginning of session, which is 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks. And so I haven't seen anything new on that. I read the data every day, watch some of the meetings, but I'll let you know there are committed grant and state money being put out there for beach and the management of alleged sea rise. I say alleged because some people don't believe in it. So I can get with Marshall and Teresa and we can, adopt a policy of trying to go after some of this when it's posted. The grants aren't posted as of yet, but the money's coming in for that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And I will add, if the state, Commissioner Shoemaker, if the state provides a different number than we do on the recertification, we are still allowed to increase that number. We cannot decrease. In other words, we couldn't, if they put forth a 20-year mark, we can't go to 10, but we can go to 25. We're allowed to make codes more stringent. Would that be right, Attorney Tracivia? Just wanted to.
Sorry, what was that?
Sorry, just saying, as for state ordinances, we are, as a town, may provide a more stringent level of ordinance, but not a lesser one.
Generally, that's true, unless the state preempts a field, as they love to do lately.
Okay,
But you're
just
right,
checking
yes.
on that. In other words, if they make the recertification 20 years, we're still capable of going to 25 or 30 or whatever.
Yes.
Okay, just double checking. Thank you.
So that's in reverse.
Marshall's
Marshall,
motioning
what's
something.
going on there?
Yes, the argument's right, but the numbers are the opposite. So if the
Right, I was
state-
gonna say.
The state
numbers are
says
the
20, we can do 10 or 15. We couldn't do 25 because they set the floor
That's right,
of the frequency.
right.
Oh, okay. So thank you for that.
Yep.
So maybe I'll follow up on that for the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Natasha? Anything? You good?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on. This is says town attorney letter. This was the opinion letter that was offered, written by Glenn, that had to do with the letters and emails that were sent and are being sent relative to the 5 questions for the referendum. They are attached. They're on page 14 for your reference. And we have about ranges between 75 and over 100 people that watch these commission meetings, but they don't all go online and read the details and the attachments. So I'm going to ask Glenn to highlight for the record the letter of opinion. Highlight, not go through every word, obviously.
Okay.
But that way the people that watch this get a sense of what your opinion letter carried
Okay.
or covered.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll start out by making clear that it's absolutely legal to do what the town is doing. You are allowed to educate the electorate about issues that they're going to be asked to vote on. In fact, there are some court cases that say it's not only a right, but a duty or an obligation of the government to educate the voters. I kind of did a little more research in this opinion letter than when I gave you the first opinion on January 4th. And kind of refresh my memory, because this all got started in 1976. There was a case called Buckley versus, you remember William Buckley, a senator from many years ago. 1976 was also my first year in law school. So I always remember that case because, you know, the professor drilled it into your head. And what it basically says is that unless you're expressly advocating, and the Buckley standard became known as the magic word standard, and you had to use, if you use words like vote for, elect, support, cast your ballot for, Smith for Congress, vote against, defeat, and reject, those were the magic words, and you couldn't use those words. If you use those words, and then you're getting into political advocacy. And then, let's see, about 2010, so 10, 11 years ago, the Supreme Court again looked at the Buckley case and actually made it even a little, depending on your perspective, stronger or weaker, stronger in the right to advocate, weaker in the right to restrict or limit public speech. And it talks about now it's not only the functional equivalent, only if there's no reasonable interpretation other than an appeal to vote for or no. So they went even further and said, yes, you can do these things. And locally, I think this case came out of Palm Beach Gardens. There's a local fellow named Sid Dinnerstein who filed a lawsuit against the then supervisor of elections, Susan Booker, and the 4th District Court of Appeals in 2020 recognized both of those tests. It talks about the Buckley case from 76. It talked about the Supreme Court case in 2010. And it endorsed this idea that unless you have the functional equivalent of advocating for, vote yes, vote no, then you are allowed to educate, and it doesn't run afoul of any of those Florida laws. So in the long-winded way of saying what you're doing is fine, you're allowed to do it. And again, there are some that argue you're obligated to do it.
Okay, any questions, comments?
I have to make a comment, sorry. In the discussion about promoting, making sure we're not doing anything that's inappropriate, that we're trying to educate the residents of Highland Beach. Some might feel that, we have a marketing firm that's helping us. Therefore, you're trying to promote and sell concepts to the population. When in fact, I went through this PACE agreement word for word to find out, is there anything onerous about this? No. Is there anything in the contract that, is nothing that is against us? That in fact, it is very favorable. As a matter of fact, it's incredibly tight. I think the mayor's even mentioned in the past meetings that most private companies wouldn't even sign this kind of an agreement. It's so one-sided. But in any event, the point of this is that contrary to what some might be saying out there, this is not about us promoting an advocacy for voting one way or another. It's about how we can present the information in a way that communicates the messages properly. That is done, I think, with professional communications, marketing personnel that can help us shape the information in a way that is easily understood without errors and without people thinking, this is an exaggeration or that we've got some subliminal message or agenda. That's what we're trying to do, is tell you exactly what our actions are and why we're doing them. So from my personal point of view, we've really leveraged the smartest and brightest of the town to come up with 5 ways in which we can be more efficient and more effective in our role, in our job, to manage the resources to the benefit of the community. So the legal question is resolved. I mean, there's no question we can do it. Then the question is how to do it, and we need some help, and that's why we're using some consulting effort here to present it in an effective manner.
Anybody else have any comments before we move on? Go ahead.
Yes, I would like to say I've been very pleased with some of the tweaks of the language. And whereas I brought up this issue 2 meetings ago, I am better satisfied and appreciate Attorney Tresivia's research. And I think the intent is always solid, and in looking out for the town and the commission as a whole, like we all come to work, we bring different views. We sometimes disagree, but now we have a comprehensive feel for it. And so I'd like to thank everyone for that. And I feel more comfortable with the language and the issuance of the letters. So thank everyone for their input.
Good. Disagreeing is healthy.
Well, that's why we have
Absolutely.
5 people, not 1,
And that's what teamwork's all about.
except for Glenn. Yeah. He's got a whole slew of people, but he's here on his own today. Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay, anything else from anybody? Move on. Okay. We're on to the commission meeting minutes on page 18. Does anybody have any comments on them? You jump. Everything is good. Okay, we'll entertain a motion to approve them.
I move we approve the approval of commission meeting minutes for the January 4, 2022 meeting.
Your second.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We're now on to town commission comments. John, you got anything left?
I sure do. Continuing in my diligence, based on, I think, the work of Commissioner Gossett-Simon, who inspired me to really take a hard look at these contracts. I read every single word. For the PACE agreement, the medical consulting agreements, and the PGAL agreements. I honestly feel, I'll go on record as saying that they're great agreements. I think they're tight. I think they're very favorable. And honestly, I would not have done it if I wasn't inspired by Commissioner Gossett-Simon, so I appreciate that. And I understand where you're coming from. I'm glad that they're as tight. I think, Marshall, you deserve a lot of credit for putting these together. I will, however, to prove that I read every single word, I will point out a typo on the contract. You're gonna love this one. And that is on page, well, it's on the package that we got. It is Exhibit A, which is on page 13, the last paragraph, number 16. Maybe you can write down Exhibit A, paragraph 16, and it's the last sentence. It says, prior to that date, the association agrees to cooperate with the town. I think it's cooperate. You have the word cooperate. I say this only because you're not here. I was going to tell you about it, but since you're not here, I'll use it as an opportunity to say, I read this darn thing and it was killing me for spending hours going through it, but it's well done. So I appreciate that. So moving on, the other point, Natasha, I mean, I have to tell you, all the work you've done on the water and sewer and the statistics, the numbers, the prices, the usage and all, I think it's really, really good that we can rely on you to dig in and present some substance and not fluff. So I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
The other thing is, I think Jeff Remus has answered the question I had about how we're moving, I think, in a positive direction with the the advisor and advocacy of the building department versus a past perception that the building department is the biggest pain and is nothing but headaches and is expensive and all they're trying to do is make money. And that's not the case. I can see that we are moving in a very positive direction. We're not trying to rip off the residents with permits. It's almost ridiculous, but I can understand it when you go through the process. So, I'm trying to give out some praise here. So I got to say, Jeff Remus is doing a good job. Keep it doing, continue the improvement cycle. Lastly, and this is a challenge for the mayor. I know we've talked about it in the past, but I think that I'm a little concerned about Milani Park. months go by, we don't really talk about it. I really wonder if the county is going to do anything. And can you give us any further feeling on direction, or should we, could we, whatever? Because Milani Park is of concern. I do get input on it from time to time about, oh, if the county doesn't do anything, then it goes back to Mrs. Milani, and then she'll put up a condo and, or it goes to a park with 28 parking spaces, 32 park, whatever it might be, and it's a mess. So can we keep, I just want to keep it alive on the agenda for discussion so that people out there know we haven't forgotten it.
Yeah, Milani Park, construction starts next week.
Whoa! And the schedule, we need the schedule. That's my only concern.
Wasn't paying attention, is paying attention now.
But you're gonna.
That does it.
It'll be fine. No, Milani Park has been put on the back burner at Parks and Recs and by the county commission, and nothing is being done at this point. It's just sitting there.
It's sitting.
So there's really nothing to report. You got to remember, they have the right to leave it on the back burner, and they have yet another 5 years when this 5 years expires.
Right.
So they have a right to do nothing for quite a while. And at this point, they are just doing nothing.
So then that begs the question, should we consider Plan B and C to, kind of force things a little bit?
No, absolutely not. The last discussion I had with Mayor Weinroth was the county realizes from our, call it the 100 sit-in for the lack of a better term, realize that the beach itself cannot accommodate the number of people that they were originally planning. And in fact, it can't accommodate 100. They recognize that now. They also recognize that the rock is a problem, that it's a dangerous rock. And they understand now that at high tide, you can't see the rock. So they're looking for trouble unless somehow they can make sure that everybody knows there's a rock there. All right. They also recognize that there are some environmental issues if they have a lot of swimmers around that rock. So the things that we have done to, quote, bring them up to speed, educate them, call it what you will, have worked. So they know that when they first were planning this 125 car parking lot, big beach, et cetera, ain't there. So they're kind of, I'm not even going to say they're regrouping. They've just put it all on hold. And that's it. Now, you may have something to add, Glenn?
No, you summarize it perfectly.
Okay, so they don't know what they're going to do right now, but they do know that there are plans. Original plans don't work. And now they're thinking that their plan B that they showed us, and you remember the diagram that I showed with, I think it was 42 parking spaces, et cetera, that probably isn't a good idea either. So it sits. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Did COVID have any relative impact on this and the development, just based on the funding and the focus on COVID?
No, I think that just helped them put it on a back burner.
Got
it. So, I mean, I would be speculating if I was guessing at this point, and I don't want to start guessing.
Yeah, so they got 5 years if they want.
Once this 5-year period expires, Glenn, do you know off the top of your head when that is?
2025.
I'm sorry?
It's 2025. All right. In 2024, they have the right to say they're going to push forward with their 5-year option, which starts in 2025 and ends in 2030.
Okay.
So if they don't do something by 2030, then they have a fallback plan based on the original sale.
Thank you. We could look up the month if you wanted to know the actual month.
Okay.
So they got a lot of time to do nothing if they want. Very obviously we'd like to bring this to a fruition and get on with our lives.
It's important, but I understand. Thank you. That's all I have.
Anybody else have any other questions on it? Okay. You done, John?
I am done.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Evelyn, do you have anything?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Peggy?
Nothing, just a note on the building research. I got the numbers backwards, but we'll be following up on that carefully as well. And thank you for that Milani update. I sort of forgot about it. We're so busy with everything else. Thank you.
Listen,
It's
with
still there.
COVID, with COVID, that's clearly a priority.
Got it. Thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
Nothing for me.
Okay, I got a couple of things. Recertification and reserves. For anybody that's watching, obviously, that lives in a condo, you can be very interested. There is a real push at the state level and at the county level, separately, two different pushes on condominiums having reserves. And the vast majority of the condos today opt to pass on their reserves. Pass meaning voting not to have the required reserves, the statutorily required reserves, and they have the right to do that. And some counties and the state are discussing more and more today, requiring the condos to have the reserves. Let me now jump over to recertification. With recertification coming in now as a requirement in more and more communities like ours, and we've already got ours moving, that if a building goes through recertification and they are found to have significant difficulties, as long as the town or city follows up, then there's no need for these condos to have reserves because they're required to take care of any of these significant problems. So this whole discussion on reserves, in my humble opinion, is mute. Because if you go through recertification and you are certified, then you don't have any of these major problems. If the problems are found, then you're required to fix them. So why do you have to have reserves? Now, some buildings that have been in arrears on taking care of their buildings, and they're found to have these really big problems today and have to spend millions and millions of dollars to fix them, well, they obviously have a financial problem. But requiring reserves now to start isn't going to help those buildings that have current problems. It would help buildings that have problems in the future. But again, the buildings can now start to put in reserves if they so wish. If they don't have the big problem now and it's found down the road, they are not going to be multi-million-dollar problems because they will be found before they become multi-million-dollar problems. So keep an eye on what's going to happen up in Tallahassee and what's going to happen in the county. Obviously, we here at Highland Beach are not even discussing a requirement for reserves. Second thing is the discussion we just had very briefly about the state ordinance that could be hurting our ability to have ordinances. Just one other thing I want to add to that. This comes from the Mayor's League. And it's just little updates that I get every now and then. And there was a touch on this ordinance. And apparently it's starting to get watered down as it goes through the chain. And who knows whether it's going to pass or not. But obviously everything coming from mayors has to do with protecting home rule. You know, we're all big on home rule. So it is starting to get watered down a little bit. Nobody knows whether it's going to go through or not go through. It'd be a damn shame if it went through. I mean, state has no right. Well, I guess they can take the right, but they shouldn't be getting involved in towns and cities ordinances. I mean, state's got enough to worry about. Last thing, Marshall, I just want to be certain that for the February 15th meeting, we're going to have the past vice mayor in here and we're going to work on that ordinance.
That's on the marine accessory. That's our target currently, is to have his presentation along with that of Ingrid's and see how we want to move forward.
Good. So that's on target.
Yeah.
Okay. That takes care of what I had. Glenn, do we have anything from you?
No, think I said enough already today.
Okay.
And everybody continue to stay safe.
Great. Okay. Marshall, anything?
Yes, just wanted to thank the commission giving us the direction on that fire station so we can hit the ground running and get that moving. Also, everything, all of our, I would say 95% of our draft documents are to the auditor. So our audit is on well ahead of schedule and probably 3.5, 4 months ahead of where we normally are. So good job to Eric and the finance department for getting the audit ready and queued up. So that's going well. That's it.
Okay. Chief, anything? By the way, congratulations again on moving so fast, getting everything ready to go there. Okay. All right. Anybody have anything before we sign off? No? Okay. At 3:51, we will adjourn. Thank you all.
Okay.
Mhm.